if you're hearing this right now, this was meant for you, not for everyone. Only for the man who has started noticing things others ignore. The man who feels the shift. The one who realized that being good did not always mean being respected. That loyalty was not always returned. That the world smiles at strength and tests softness. If that man is you, then listen carefully, because this is the moment illusions die. Not peacefully, but decisively. Something inside you stops chasing approval. You begin to understand that the world does not reward intentions. It rewards awareness, control, and power. This is where most men become bitter, but a few become calm, calculated, dangerous in silence. Machiavelli understood this long ago. People move by interest, not emotion. Once you see this, you cannot go back to innocence. You stop expecting fairness. You start studying human nature. Every betrayal becomes information. Every loss becomes discipline. And slowly, you become harder to manipulate, harder to reach, harder to break. If you feel this shift happening inside you, comment below. I choose clarity over comfort. Because becoming untouchable begins the moment you stop needing the world to be gentle with you. Number 1. The death of naivety. The second transformation begins when naivety dies. Not hope, naivety. There is a difference. Hope gives a man direction. Naivety makes him blind. And most men stay blind because the truth is uncomfortable. They want to believe effort alone guarantees reward. They want to believe honesty protects them. They want to believe people think the way they do. But the moment you start seeing patterns instead of promises, something changes inside you. You realize people respond to strength before they respond to goodness. They respect boundaries more than sacrifices. And suddenly you stop explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. This is not where you become cold toward everyone. This is where you become selective. Machiavelli never said a man must be cruel. He said a man must understand reality as it is, not as he wishes it to be. And reality is simple. People test limits consciously or unconsciously. They push to see how much they can take, how far they can go, how easily you bend. The man who fears losing approval becomes easy to control. The man who accepts being misunderstood becomes free. You begin to notice how often emotions are used as leverage. Guilt, obligation, sympathy, tools disguised as virtue. And once you see this, you stop reacting immediately. You pause, you observe. Silence becomes your advantage, because power rarely announces itself. It watches, learns, and moves only when necessary. This is the moment your emotional reactions start turning into calculated responses. Not because you stopped feeling, but because you stopped letting feelings make decisions for you. Understand this clearly. A cold-hearted man is not empty, he is disciplined. He feels anger, but does not explode. He feels disappointment, but does not beg. He feels pain, but does not advertise it. The world calls this cold because it cannot control it. But in truth, it is self-mastery. And self-mastery makes a man unpredictable, hard to manipulate, hard to pressure. There will be people who say, "You've changed," and they will be right. You have changed. You no longer tolerate disrespect disguised as humor. You no longer overextend yourself for people who offer nothing in return. You no longer chase validation. And this makes some people uncomfortable, because the version of you they preferred was easier to manage. Remember this: when people say you've become cold, often what they mean is you stopped being convenient. At this stage, many men make a mistake. They confuse strength with aggression. They think becoming untouchable means becoming hostile. It doesn't. True strength is calm, controlled, measured. The strongest man in the room is rarely the loudest. He listens more than he speaks. He reveals less than he knows. He understands that information is power and silence protects it. Start paying attention to how people behave when you stop giving constant access to your time and energy. Watch who respects your boundaries and who resents them. This observation alone will teach you more about loyalty than years of conversation, because people reveal themselves when they stop getting what they want from you. This is where emotional independence is born. You stop needing everyone to understand your path. You stop explaining your growth. You move quietly, improving your mind, your discipline, your standards. and slowly the chaos around you loses its influence. Drama stops reaching you, manipulation stops working. You become harder to provoke, harder to read, harder to shake. If this resonates with you, pause for a moment and comment below. I control my reactions. Say it not for others, but as a reminder to yourself, because the man who controls his reactions controls his directions. Controls his direction. The truth is, becoming strong requires disappointment. It requires seeing people clearly without romanticizing their intentions. Some will stay, some will leave, some will only respect you once you stop trying to please them. Accept this without bitterness. Bitterness weakens judgment. Clarity sharpens it. And here is the paradox most men never understand. The colder you become toward chaos, the more peaceful your life becomes. You stop fighting every battle. You choose which conflicts deserve your energy. You stop proving your worth. You build it quietly instead. This is the beginning of real power, not dominance over others, but dominance over yourself. So listen carefully. The death of naivety is not the loss of your humanity. It is the protection of it. You are not becoming heartless. You are becoming deliberate. And a deliberate man cannot be easily moved, easily fooled, or easily broken. If you are still listening, then you already feel the shift happening. And if you're ready for the next step, comment once more. I move with purpose. Number 2, the discipline of emotional control. There is a stage in a man's evolution where he realizes that strength is not built in moments of victory, but in moments of restraint. Anyone can react. Anyone can raise their voice, defend their ego, or chase the last word. But very few men can remain still when provoked. And that is where real power begins, in emotional control. The world is full of men who are physically strong but emotionally predictable. They can be angered, flattered, manipulated, or distracted with ease. And whoever can control your emotions controls your direction. Machiavelli understood this deeply. A ruler who reacts emotionally becomes easy to overthrow. A man who reacts emotionally becomes easy to defeat. You must understand something uncomfortable. Most conflicts are traps, not battles worth winning, but distractions designed to pull you into emotional chaos. When you respond without thinking, you surrender control. When you react instantly, you reveal your weaknesses. But when you pause, when you allow silence to sit between stimulus and response, you regain authority over yourself. This is why the cold man appears calm even in tension. He is not unaffected, he is disciplined. He feels the same emotions as everyone else, but he refuses to let temporary feelings create permanent consequences. Emotional control is not suppression. Suppression turns into resentment. Control is awareness. You notice anger rising, but you do not obey it. You notice disrespect, but you choose the timing of your response. You understand that timing is power. The man who moves too early exposes himself. The man who moves too late loses opportunity. The man who moves deliberately cannot be rushed. Most people live reactively. They wake up reacting to messages, reacting to opinions, reacting to problems created by others. And slowly their lives become a series of responses instead of decisions. But the man becoming untouchable reverses this pattern. He becomes proactive. He decides what deserves his attention and what deserves silence. And silence, when used correctly, is one of the most intimidating forms of strength. Because people expect resistance, they expect explanation. When they receive neither, they are forced to confront themselves. You will notice something as you change. The same situations that once drained you begin to lose their power. Insults feel smaller. Drama feels distant. Arguments feel unnecessary. This is not indifference. It is perspective. You begin to understand that not every challenge deserves engagement. Dark psychology teaches a simple truth. People test emotional boundaries instinctively. They push until they find resistance. If there is none, they push further. This is why emotional discipline must be paired with firm boundaries. Calm does not mean passive. Silence does not mean weak. When you speak, it must be clear, short, final, no excess explanation. The more you explain, the more negotiable you appear. The more certain you sound, the less people attempt to move you. This is where masculine stoicism separates itself from emotional numbness. Stoicism is not the absence of feeling. It is the mastery of it. You still care. You still feel loyalty, ambition, even anger. But these emotions serve you instead of ruling you. You become selective about where your energy goes. You invest in growth, not reaction, in progress, not proving yourself. And here is the truth most men avoid. Emotional reactions often come from insecurity, the need to be understood, the need to be respected immediately, the need to defend identity. But once you are secure in your direction, urgency disappears. You no longer need instant validation. You allow results to speak over time. This patience creates a quiet confidence that others can feel but cannot easily challenge. People will start watching you differently. Some will respect you more. Others will accuse you of becoming distant. Let them. Distance is often necessary for clarity. When you stop reacting emotionally, you begin to see motives more clearly. You notice who thrives on chaos, who benefits from your frustration, who only approaches when you are vulnerable. Awareness replaces assumption, and awareness protects you. At this stage, many men feel alone, not because they lost everyone, but because they no longer connect through drama and emotional dependency. Conversations change, priorities change. You become comfortable with silence, with solitude, with your own thoughts. And this is dangerous not to you, but to anyone who once relied on your emotional reactions to influence you. A man comfortable alone cannot be easily pressured by the fear of losing people. Remember this carefully. Emotional control does not make you cold toward life. It makes you focused. You laugh when laughter is genuine. You speak when words are necessary. You walk away when engagement serves no purpose. Your presence becomes intentional instead of constant, and intention creates weight. People begin to listen more closely when you speak less often. If this is making sense to you, pause and comment below. My emotions serve me. Say it as a commitment because discipline begins with awareness. The moment you realize you are responsible for your reactions, you stop blaming the world for your state of mind. There will be moments where maintaining control feels difficult, moments where anger feels justified, and sometimes it is. But strength is not the absence of anger. It is the ability to use it without being consumed by it. Anger can sharpen action or destroy judgment. The difference is discipline. The cold, strong man channels emotion into movement, into improvement, into silence that speaks louder than arguments ever could. Over time, something powerful happens. People stop testing you as often, not because you became aggressive, but because your reactions are no longer predictable. Manipulation requires emotional access. When access is limited, manipulation fails. You become harder to read, harder to influence, harder to move off your path. This is what being untouchable truly means. Not isolated, not emotionless, but internally stable. And stability is rare. In a world addicted to reaction, the calm man stands out. He becomes a reference point. Others feel his control even if they cannot explain it. Opportunities come easier because reliability attracts trust. Respect grows because restraint signals strength. You no longer need to demand attention. Your presence earns it naturally. So understand this final truth of this stage. Emotional control is not a single decision. It is a daily discipline, a constant choosing of long-term power over short-term satisfaction. Each time you refuse to react impulsively, you strengthen that discipline. Each time you choose calm over chaos, you become more difficult to break. If you are still here, still listening, then you are already separating yourself from the crowd. Comment once more. I remain unshaken because the man who cannot be shaken cannot be controlled, and the man who cannot be controlled becomes truly powerful. Number 3, the power of detachment. There comes a point in a man's evolution where he understands a dangerous truth. Attachment without control creates vulnerability, not love, not loyalty. Blind attachment, the kind that makes you tolerate disrespect, ignore red flags, and sacrifice your direction just to keep people comfortable. This is where many men lose themselves. They confuse endurance with strength. They hold on long after something has stopped serving their growth. But the man becoming cold and strong learns a different rule. He learns the power of detachment. Detachment is often misunderstood. people hear the word and imagine indifference, isolation, or emotional emptiness. That is not what this is. Detachment is clarity. It is the ability to care without losing control, to value people without depending on them for identity, to walk away when necessary without collapsing emotionally. Machiavellian philosophy teaches that dependence weakens judgment. The more you need something, the less clearly you see it, and the less clearly you see, the easier you see, the easier you are to manipulate. Look closely at human behavior. People sense need. They feel it in your tone, your decisions, your hesitation. When you fear losing someone or something, your standards begin to lower quietly. You tolerate more, you accept less, you compromise your principles to maintain comfort, and slowly, respect disappears, not only from others, but from yourself. The cold, strong man refuses this slow erosion. He understands that attachment must never come at the cost of self-respect. Detachment begins when you accept a hard reality. Not everyone is meant to stay. Some people enter your life as lessons, not companions. Some relationships exist only to teach you boundaries, and once the lesson is learned, holding on becomes self-destruction. Weak men cling to familiarity. Strong men choose alignment. They ask one question: does this add strength to my life or drain it? This mindset changes everything. You stop chasing people who are unsure about you. You stop forcing connections that require constant effort just to survive. You stop explaining your worth to those committed to misunderstanding you. And something unexpected happens. Peace replaces anxiety, because anxiety is often the fear of losing what you believe you cannot replace. Detachment removes that fear. You understand that your value does not disappear when someone leaves. Dark psychology reveals another uncomfortable truth. People often respect what they cannot easily control. When you become emotionally self-sufficient, the dynamics around you shift. You are no longer easily pressured by guilt or approval. Your decisions become harder to influence, and this makes you appear stronger even when you say very little, because strength is not loud, it is stable. But detachment requires discipline. There will be moments when your instinct tells you to chase, to fix, to hold on, especially when history and emotion are involved. This is where most men fail. They mistake emotional intensity for importance. Just because something feels strong does not mean it is right. The cold, disciplined man steps back. He observes patterns instead of promises. He asks what reality shows, not what hope suggests. Understand this clearly. Detachment does not mean you stop loving. It means you stop losing yourself in the process. You give freely, but not blindly. You invest where there is reciprocity. You remain kind, but never naive. And this balance creates a powerful presence. People feel that you are capable of walking away, and that possibility alone changes how they treat you. If this resonates with you, pause and comment below. I choose self-respect over attachment. Say it as a reminder, because every strong man reaches a moment where he must choose between comfort and growth. As you develop this mindset, you begin to notice how much energy you once wasted trying to control outcomes you never truly controlled. Other people's opinions, other people's loyalty, other people's emotions. You realize that control was always an illusion. The only real control you ever had was over your standards and your response. And once you accept this, life becomes simpler, cleaner, less chaotic. Detachment also protects your ambition. Many men abandon their purpose to maintain approval. They shrink themselves to avoid intimidating others. They delay growth to keep relationships comfortable. But the man who understands power accepts that growth creates distance. Not everyone will understand your discipline. Not everyone will support your transformation. Some will call it arrogance. Others will call it coldness. Let them. People often criticize what they do not have the courage to become. There is another layer to detachment, freedom from validation. When you no longer need constant recognition, your actions become purer. You work because it matters, not because it is seen. You improve because it strengthens you, not because it impresses others. This quiet independence is intimidating to those who rely on external approval because they cannot predict your moves. You are no longer performing, you are building. And here is the paradox. The less you chase, the more things begin to come toward you. Respect grows, opportunities appear, Conversations become more genuine. Why? Because desperation disappears. People trust stability. They are drawn to individuals who do not demand attention, but naturally command it. Detachment creates that gravity. But be careful. Detachment must never become bitterness. Bitterness closes a man's heart and poisons judgment. The goal is not to stop caring. The goal is to care wisely, to understand that loss is number of growth, that endings create space for stronger beginnings. The cold-hearted man is not angry at the world. He simply understands it. There will be moments when walking away feels like losing, when silence feels heavier than confrontation, when letting go feels unfair. In those moments, remember this: temporary discomfort often protects long-term peace. Strength is not always fighting. Sometimes strength is leaving without explanation, without drama, without the need to be understood. Over time, detachment gives you something rare: emotional independence. You enjoy connection, but you do not rely on it for stability. You appreciate loyalty, but you do not beg for it. You love deeply, but you remain grounded in yourself. And this balance makes you difficult to shake, difficult to manipulate, difficult to replace. If you are still listening, then you already feel the shift. You are beginning to understand that becoming untouchable is not about building walls around your heart. It is about building foundations beneath it. Comment again: I walk away with dignity, because dignity is the silent weapon of a strong man. And remember this as you move forward. The world respects those who respect those who respect those who respect themselves first. When you stop clinging, you start choosing. When you stop fearing loss, you start gaining control. And when you master detachment, you become dangerous in the calmest way possible. A man who cannot be kept where he no longer belongs. This is where cold strength truly forms, not in isolation but in independence. Not in cruelty, but in clarity. You are not becoming less human, you are becoming harder to break. Number 4, the silent rise of power. There is a stage where the transformation becomes invisible to everyone except you. No announcements, no dramatic changes, just a quiet shift in how you move through the world. This is where real power begins. Not when others notice your strength, but when you stop needing them to notice at all. The man becoming cold and strong understands that power grows best in silence. Most people chase recognition before they build substance. They speak about plans instead of executing them. They display ambition instead of living it. But Machiavelli warned against this long ago. Visibility without strength creates enemies. When you reveal too much too early, you invite resistance before you are prepared to handle it. The disciplined man moves differently. He builds quietly. He improves without announcement. He allows results to arrive before words. This silence is not weakness. It is strategy. When people know less about your intentions, they have less ability to interfere. You become harder to predict, harder to compete against, and in a world where everyone is constantly broadcasting their lives, silence becomes an advantage. While others seek validation, you seek progress. You begin to understand that power is not domination over others. It is control over yourself, your time, your emotions, and your direction. The loud man tries to prove his strength. The strong man has nothing to prove. His actions speak long before his words do. And because he is not desperate for attention, attention naturally finds him. There is something unsettling about a man who moves with calm certainty. He does not rush. He does not overreact. He does not explain himself unnecessarily. People sense that his decisions are deliberate, and deliberation creates authority. When you stop chasing approval, your presence changes. Conversations become shorter, but more meaningful. Your words carry weight because you do not waste them. Dark psychology teaches that people respect consistency more than intensity. Anyone can be motivated for a week. Anyone can appear confident for a moment. But consistency signals discipline, and discipline signals power. When people see that your behavior does not change with mood or pressure, they begin to take you seriously. Not because you demanded respect, but because your stability earned it. This is also where patience becomes a weapon. Weak men need immediate results to stay motivated. Strong men understand timing. They invest in long-term outcomes. They tolerate slow progress because they know permanence cannot be rushed. The cold, strong man is willing to work in obscurity while others seek applause, and when results finally appear, they seem sudden to outsiders. Even though they were built quietly over time, you will notice something during this phase. Some people become uncomfortable with your silence. They may interpret it as distance or arrogance. In reality, they are reacting to a loss of access. They no longer know everything you think or plan, and uncertainty makes people uneasy. Do not mistake this reaction as a problem. It is a sign that your energy is becoming more contained, more intentional. Power grows where energy is not constantly leaked. Every unnecessary argument, every emotional reaction, every attempt to prove yourself drains that energy. The disciplined man conserves it. He chooses carefully where to invest attention. He understands that focus is limited and whatever receives focus grows. So he feeds his purpose, not distractions. If this speaks to you, pause and comment below. I build in silence because the strongest foundations are laid when no one is watching. There is another truth that emerges here. The more you improve, the fewer people can relate to your mindset. Not because you are better than them, but because your priorities change. Entertainment loses its grip. Drama feels exhausting. You begin to value peace over stimulation, progress over approval. And this can feel isolating at first. But isolating is often the price of transformation. It gives you space to think clearly, to refine your direction without noise. Machiavellian thinking emphasizes preparation. A wise ruler strengthens his position before conflict appears. In the same way, a strong man prepares before life tests him again. He saves resources. He strengthens skills. He studies patterns. He assumes challenges will come and ensures he is ready when they do. This mindset removes fear because fear thrives in uncertainty, and preparation reduces uncertainty. You also begin to understand influence differently. Influence is not forcing others to follow you. It is becoming someone others naturally listen to. When your life reflects discipline and control, your words carry credibility. People seek your opinion because your actions prove consistency. This is quiet leadership, power without noise. But this stage requires humility. Power without humility becomes arrogance, and arrogance blinds judgment. The cold, strong man remembers where he started. He understands that strength is temporary if discipline disappears, so he continues refining himself even when success begins to show. He avoids complacency. He knows that comfort weakens awareness. Another change happens internally. You stop comparing yourself to others. Comparison wastes energy and creates insecurity. Instead, you measure progress against your past self. Are you calmer than before, more disciplined, less reactive, more focused? This internal measurement keeps your growth steady and independent of external opinions. And slowly something powerful happens. Life becomes quieter, not empty, controlled. Problems still exist, but they no longer feel overwhelming because you trust your ability to handle them. Confidence stops being an act and becomes a byproduct of preparation. You walk differently, speak differently, decide faster. Hesitation fades because clarity replaces doubt. If you are still listening, then you are already moving differently from most men. Comment again. I move with quiet power. Let it remind you that strength does not need an audience. Understand this final truth of this stage. The silent rise of power is not about becoming feared. Fear is unstable. It creates resistance. Real power creates respect, and respect grows from consistency, restraint, and reliability. People know where you stand. They know you cannot be easily pressured or manipulated, and because of that, they treat you differently. You are no longer reacting to life. You are shaping it slowly, deliberately, without noise. This is where the cold-hearted man becomes truly strong, not because he hardened against the world, but because he mastered himself within it. And once a man reaches this point, he becomes difficult to stop. Not because he moves fast, but because he never stops moving forward. Number 5, the discipline of ruthless standards. There comes a moment when a man realizes that strength is not only built by what he does, but by what he refuses to tolerate. This is where standards are born, not the kind spoken about publicly, but the quiet internal rules that govern how you live, who you allow close, and what you accept from yourself. The man becoming cold and strong understands that without standards, discipline collapses, and without discipline, power fades. Most people lower their standards to avoid discomfort. They tolerate disrespect to keep peace. They accept mediocrity to avoid effort. They stay in environments that slowly drain them because leaving feels uncertain. But Machiavellian thinking rejects comfort as a guide. Comfort weakens awareness. Growth requires friction. And the moment you raise your standards, friction appears immediately. People who benefited from your old limits will resist your new ones. This is where many men retreat. They fear being seen as difficult, distant, or changed. But understand this clearly. Every level of growth requires separation from what no longer aligns. You cannot become stronger while maintaining habits that weaken you. You cannot build discipline while surrounding yourself with chaos. The cold, strong man accepts this without apology. He does not announce his standards. He enforces them through behavior. Standards begin with self-respect. How you speak to yourself, how you manage your time, what you allow your mind to consume. Weakness often hides in small daily compromises. One delay becomes a habit. One excuse becomes identity. Over time, these small concessions erode confidence. But when your standards rise, excuses lose their place. You begin doing what is necessary, not what feels easy. Dark psychology reveals something uncomfortable. People adjust their behavior based on what you tolerate. If you accept inconsistency, you receive inconsistency. If you accept disrespect, it repeats. Boundaries teach others how to treat you, and boundaries only work when they are enforced calmly and consistently, not emotionally, not aggressively, simply and firmly. This is why strong men speak less but mean more. When you say no without guilt, people understand your limits. When you walk away without drama, people understand your standards. You do not need to threaten consequences. Your willingness to leave is the consequence. And that willingness creates respect, even from those who disagree with you. At this stage, you stop chasing environments that do not value discipline. You become more selective with friendships, with opportunities, with where your energy goes, not out of arrogance, but out of awareness. Energy is limited, but tension is limited. And whatever you invest in grows. The cold, strong man invests in strength, mentally, physically, emotionally. There will be moments where maintaining standards feels lonely, where saying no isolates you from the crowd, but loneliness in discipline is temporary. Regret from lowered standards lasts much longer. The man preparing to become untouchable understands that short-term discomfort protects long-term respect. If this resonates with you, comment below. My standards define me. Because the moment you raise your standards, your life begins to reorganize around them. Another shift happens here. You stop negotiating with your own potential. You wake up when you said you would. You finish what you started. You hold yourself accountable even when no one is watching. This private integrity becomes the foundation of confidence. Confidence is not built by words or motivation. It is built by keeping promises to yourself, and people notice not immediately, but over time. Consistency changes how others perceive you. You become reliable, grounded, difficult to pressure into decisions that conflict with your direction. While others move emotionally, you move intentionally, and intentional creates stability. But ruthless standards must be balanced with awareness. The goal is not perfection. Perfection creates paralysis. The goal is progress, continuous improvement. The cold, strong man does not punish himself for failure. He learns from it quickly and adjusts. He understands that discipline is not rigidity. It is alignment. You will also begin to see how many people operate without clear standards at all. They move according to mood, approval, or convenience. And this realization reinforces your path, because once you experience the stability that discipline creates, chaos becomes unattractive. You no longer envy careless living. You value control. This stage transforms how you see success. Success is no longer an event. It becomes a lifestyle, the result of daily decisions repeated consistently. You stop waiting for motivation. You rely on structure. You stop asking whether you feel like doing something. You ask whether it moves you forward. If you are still here, still listening, then you understand something many never do. Strength is built quietly through repetition and restraint. Comment again. I live by discipline. Let it anchor your mindset, and remember this final truth of this stage. Becoming cold and strong does not mean becoming harsh toward the world. It means becoming uncompromising with your own growth. You become patient with others, but strict with yourself, calm in conflict, but firm in principle. Because a man with clear standards cannot be easily influenced. He knows what he stands for. He knows what he refuses. And once a man reaches that clarity, he becomes difficult to bend and almost impossible to break. Number 6. The freedom of becoming unpredictable. There is a moment in a man's evolution when people realize they can no longer predict him, not because he becomes chaotic, but because he stops reacting in expected ways. This is where a new level of strength appears, unpredictability, born from self-control. Most people live in patterns. Push them and they react with anger. Praise them and they seek more approval. Ignore them and they chase attention. Their behavior becomes easy to anticipate and anything predictable can be controlled. But the man who becomes cold and strong breaks this cycle. Machiavelli understood that predictability invites exploitation when others know exactly how you will respond. They know how to move you. They know which emotions to trigger and which buttons to press. But when your reactions are measured instead of automatic, manipulation fails. The strong man listens longer than expected. He responds later than expected. Sometimes he does nothing at all. And that silence creates uncertainty. Understand this clearly. Unpredictability is not inconsistency. Inconsistency is weakness. It comes from mood, insecurity, or lack of discipline. Unpredictability, on the other hand, comes from control. Your principles remain firm, but your reactions are not emotional. People cannot rush you into decisions. They cannot provoke instant responses. They cannot assume your next move. And this makes you difficult to influence. You begin to notice how often people rely on emotional patterns. They expect you to defend yourself immediately. They expect explanations. They expect visible reactions. When those reactions disappear, their strategy collapses. Calmness disrupts expectation, and disruption creates power, because when others become uncertain, you gain time to think clearly. Dark psychology reveals that many social dynamics operate on emotional momentum. One reaction leads to another until conflict escalates. The cold, disciplined man interrupts this momentum. He slows situations down. He refuses to match emotional intensity. And by doing so, he changes the entire outcome. The argument that never happens is often the battle already won. This stage also frees you internally. You stop feeling obligated to respond to everything. Not every message requires an answer. Not every opinion requires defense. Not every challenge deserves your attention. The need to be understood fades. You realize that clarity within yourself matters more than agreement from others. And this realization removes pressure. You move because it aligns with your purpose, not because it satisfies expectations. There will be people who misunderstand this change. They may say you've become distant or harder to read. In truth, you simply stopped being emotionally available to manipulation. Your energy becomes reserved for what matters, and reservation creates presence. When you finally do speak, people listen more carefully because they know your words are intentional. If this resonates with you, comment below. I move without pressure because the man who cannot be rushed, cannot be controlled. Another shift happens here. You begin to see patience differently. Patience is no longer waiting passively. It becomes strategic timing. You understand that immediate action is not always powerful action. Sometimes the strongest move is observation, letting others reveal their intentions, letting situations unfold before deciding where to stand. The impulsive man reveals himself early. The disciplined man gathers information first. This unpredictability also protects your peace. When you stop reacting automatically, emotional conflicts lose their grip on you. People who once thrived on provoking reactions lose interest. Drama moves elsewhere. Your life becomes quieter, not because problems disappear, but because fewer problems gain access to your attention. But there is a responsibility that comes with this stage. You must remain grounded in principle. Unpredictability without values becomes manipulation. The goal is not to confuse others for advantage, but to remain internally stable regardless of external pressure. Your calm must come from clarity, not calculation alone. The cold, strong man does not play games. He simply refuses to be played. You will notice something powerful over time. Respect begins to replace familiarity. People may know less about your thoughts, but they trust your consistency. They understand that you do not act impulsively, that your decisions are considered. And this creates a quiet authority, not demanded, earned. At this point, fear begins to disappear, not because life becomes easier, but because you trust your ability to adapt. Predictable men fear unexpected situations. Adaptable men welcome them. You know that whatever happens, you will respond deliberately, and that confidence makes you steady when others panic. If you are still listening, then you are already changing the way you move through the world. Comment again, I remain in control. Let it remind you that control begins within, not outside, and understand this final truth of the stage. Becoming unpredictable is not about hiding who you are. It is about mastering how you respond. You are no longer driven by impulse or expectation. You choose your reactions. You choose your battles. You choose your timing. And when a man chooses instead of reacts, he becomes difficult to read, difficult to pressure, and nearly impossible to manipulate. This is the freedom that comes when emotional discipline meets self-awareness. The freedom of becoming untouchable without ever needing to announce it. Number 7. The loneliness of real strength. There is a truth few men are prepared for when they begin this transformation. Strength changes your environment, not because you reject people, but because your priorities stop matching the crowd. The conversations that once entertained you begin to feel empty. The habits that once felt normal begin to feel limiting. And slowly, without announcement, distance appears. This is the loneliness of real strength. Not isolation forced upon you, but separation created by growth. Most men fear this stage. They mistake loneliness for loss. They assume something has gone wrong because fewer people understand them. But the cold, strong man recognizes this as number of evolution. When your standards rise, your circle naturally becomes smaller. Not everyone is willing to grow. Not everyone is comfortable around discipline. Your calm can make others confront their own chaos, and many prefer comfort over confrontation. Machiavellian philosophy teaches that power often requires standing alone before others choose to follow. A ruler who depends entirely on approval cannot make difficult decisions. In the same way, a man who fears being alone cannot live according to his principles. The need for constant companionship weakens judgment. It pushes men to compromise values just to avoid silence. But silence is where clarity is built. In solitude, you begin to hear your own thoughts without interference. You begin to understand your motivations more honestly. What do you actually want? What are you building? Who are you becoming? These questions are uncomfortable, and many avoid them by surrounding themselves with noise. But the man becoming untouchable learns to sit with discomfort because discomfort reveals truth. Dark psychology reveals another layer to this stage. Many relationships are built on mutual weakness rather than mutual strength. Shared complaints, shared distractions, shared avoidance of responsibility. When you begin to change, those dynamics no longer function. Some people will pull away. Others will try to pull you back into old habits, not always out of malice, often out of familiarity. Your growth reminds them of what they are avoiding. This is where emotional discipline is tested again. You must learn to let people go without resentment. Bitterness poisons progress. The goal is not to judge others for choosing differently, but to accept that paths diverge. The cold, strong man does not chase those who leave. He wishes them well and continues forward because attachment to the past prevents movement toward the future. There will be nights where silence feels heavy, moments where progress feels invisible, times when you question whether the transformation is worth it. Understand this. Every man who becomes strong walks through this phase. Growth removes illusions before it provides rewards. You lose familiarity before you gain alignment. And in that space between, loneliness appears, but something important begins to happen. If you remain steady, you become comfortable in your own company. You stop needing constant distraction. Your mind becomes sharper. Your emotions become quieter. Decisions become clearer. You realize that being alone is not the same as being empty. In fact, it creates independence, and independence removes fear. If this resonates with you, comment below. I stand strong alone. Because a man who is comfortable alone cannot be easily controlled by the fear of abandonment. As time passes, the loneliness changes shape. It becomes peace. You start appreciating calm mornings, focused work, uninterrupted thought. You notice how much energy chaos once consumed. And when new people enter your life, the dynamic is different. You no longer accept connection out of necessity. You choose it carefully. Quality replaces quantity. This stage also strengthens your emotional resilience. When you stop relying on others to stabilize your mood, you become internally grounded. External events still affect you, but they no longer define you. Praise does not inflate you. Criticism does not destroy you. Your center remains steady, and stability is rare in a reactive world. People will begin to sense this change even if they cannot explain it. Some will respect it, others may feel intimidated by it. A man who is emotionally self-sufficient cannot be easily influenced. He listens without needing agreement. He walks away without needing validation. And this quiet independence creates a form of presence that words cannot replicate. But remember this carefully. Strength must never become isolation as identity. The goal is not to reject connection. The goal is to build connection from strength instead of need. When you no longer fear being alone, relationships become healthier. You give freely without desperation. You receive loyalty without demanding it. You remain grounded whether people stay or go. There is a powerful realization waiting at the end of this stage. Loneliness was never punishment. It was preparation. It removed noise so you could hear your own direction. It forced you to build stability within yourself instead of borrowing it from others. And once that stability exists, you carry it everywhere. If you are still listening, then you already understand something most never do. Comment again. My peace is my power. Let it remind you that silence is not emptiness, it is control. And understand this final truth. The man who survives loneliness without becoming bitter becomes unshakable. He learns that strength does not come from being surrounded, but from being centered, from knowing who he is without constant reflection from others. This is where cold strength becomes quiet. Confidence. You no longer need to prove anything. You no longer fear losing everything because you know that wherever you go, you carry your discipline, your clarity, and your self-respect with you. And a man who carries those things cannot truly be alone. He is simply ahead of where he once stood. Number 8. The mind that cannot be broken. There is a final shift that happens before a man becomes truly untouchable. It is not physical. It is not visible. It happens in the mind. The moment you realize that strength is not avoiding hardship but becoming unbreakable because of it. Up to this point, you have learned control, detachment, discipline, and silence. Now, all of it is tested because life does not stop challenging you just because you became stronger. In fact, challenges often increase. The difference is that now you respond differently. Most people spend their lives trying to avoid discomfort. They chase ease, security, and certainty. But the cold, strong man understands something deeper. Discomfort is information. Pressure reveals weaknesses that comfort hides. Failure exposes gaps that success disguises. Instead of resisting difficulty, you begin studying it. What is this teaching me? Where must I improve? This mindset removes fear from struggle. Pain stops being an enemy and becomes a teacher. Machiavelli wrote that fortune favors the prepared mind, not the lucky one, not the hopeful one, the prepared one. A man who expects difficulty is rarely shocked by it. He adapts faster, recovers faster, moves forward while others remain stuck asking why things went wrong. Resilience is not built in easy moments. It is built when you continue moving despite disappointment, despite uncertainty, despite loss. This is where emotional strength becomes mental endurance. You stop interpreting setbacks as personal attacks. You stop asking why things are unfair. The world was never designed to be fair. It responds to preparation, awareness, and persistence. Once you accept this, frustration loses its power. Energy that once went into complaining now goes into adjustment. Dark psychology teaches that people often break not because of one large failure, but because of repeated emotional exhaustion. They react to every obstacle as if it is permanent. The strong man does the opposite. He sees obstacles as temporary. Situations change, emotions pass. What remains is your response. And when your response remains steady, nothing hits as hard. You begin to notice something inside yourself, a calm during pressure. Situations that once created panic now create focus. While others react emotionally, your mind slows down. You analyze instead of collapsing. This is not coldness toward life. It is confidence earned through experience. You have already survived difficulty before. You know you can do it again. There is also a quiet acceptance that forms here, not resignation, but realism. You accept that loss is number of growth, that betrayal can happen, that plans can fail. And because you accept these possibilities, they lose their ability to shock you. The unexpected becomes manageable. Fear fades because uncertainty no longer feels threatening. If this speaks to you, comment below. I cannot be broken, not as arrogance, but as commitment. Because an unbreakable mind is built through repeated decisions to continue at this stage. You stop needing motivation. Motivation is temporary. Discipline remains. You move forward whether you feel inspired or not. You do the work whether you are seen or unseen. This consistency builds a quiet certainty inside you. You begin trusting your own endurance more than temporary emotions. And trust in yourself creates stability no external approval can provide. Another change happens. You stop taking things personally. Criticism becomes information instead of insult. Rejection becomes redirection instead of failure. You realize that most events are not about you at all. They are circumstances, timing, or incompatibility. This perspective protects your peace. You conserve emotional energy for what truly matters. People around you will notice this resilience. Some will admire it. Others may misunderstand it as emotional distance. But the truth is simple. You have learned not to collapse under pressure. You bend when necessary, but you do not break. And that flexibility makes you stronger than rigid strength ever could. The man with an unbreakable mind does not rush revenge, does not chase validation, does not panic under stress. He adapts, he learns, he continues. While others burn out, he endures. And endurance over time defeats intensity, because consistency outlasts emotion every time. Number 9, the untouchable man. Now you understand. Becoming cold and strong was never about losing your heart. It was about mastering it. You no longer chase approval, react to chaos, or fear loss. You move with clarity, discipline, and quiet power. This is the sage rhythm mindset. Control yourself and the world loses its control over you. If you made it this far, comment below. I become untouchable. And if this spoke to you, like the video, subscribe this channel and turn on notifications, because the next evolution begins where comfort ends. If you are still listening, then you are already building this mindset. Comment again, I endure and rise. Let it remind you that strength is not measured by how hard you hit, but by how steadily you continue moving forward. Understand this final truth of this stage. Becoming unbreakable does not mean you never feel pain. It means pain no longer controls your direction. You acknowledge it, learn from it, and keep moving. The storms still come, but they no longer define you. And once a man reaches this point, fear loses its grip completely, because he knows that whatever happens, he will adapt, recover, and rebuild. His strength no longer depends on circumstances. It exists within him.